I've been building an imaginary world for years, but it was a world only in my mind. So I decided to DM a D&D campaign with this world and its lore. I invited my only 3 friends and my little brother. Then the nightmare began. Session -1. Before session 0, they'd spend some time trying to understand the rules and deciding what kind of character they wanted to be. Session 0. The next day. Player 1 decided that he didn't want to choose between warrior, aka fighter, and mage, so he wanted a mix of both. At this time, I didn't know that Eldritch Knight was an existing subclass, and I didn't know the existence of the game Arcane Knight, so I improvised a class that I called Arcane Knight, then made it better and better until it felt like an actual class. Player 2, the most childish, made an old mage that is a little inappropriate at times, and dumb. He never stopped talking about stuff on the edge of safe for work and wanted to make a collection of undergarments of people he had taken out. Player 3, my little brother, is obsessed with Lord of the Rings and made an elf ranger named Legolas. Player 4 never showed up, never called me, and never answered my calls after session -1. I've never even saw him again. First problem, none of them made a backstory and didn't want to make one. So session 1 was on the same day as session 0. Session 1. They hear screaming from a barricaded house. They head inside, fight some bandits, and loot the corpse of a dead woman. These were mercenaries that were hired to kill adventurers that lived there. Player 1 and 2 go in the bedrooms and ask if there were toys. No, why would those be in there? This is not a not safe for work campaign, and my brother, who was 10-year-olds at a time, is at the table. Come on, people. Such toys did exist in the Middle Ages, but that's not the point. They stop in front of a half-open door. They take a peek before deciding what to do. You see 3 orcs, one with darker skin and white war paintings, speaking to a man with a goblin by his side.
I kick the door down, and then I pull my pants down and begin twerking,
said the mage. Yeah, the mage. The one that shouldn't be in front during a battle, because, no armor, low health. After asking him a lot of times if he really wanted to do this because it was stupid and dangerous, he still did not change his mind. So there were 5 of them, and they got a bonus because it's from behind. And since you got no armor, the dice gods were in his favor because they didn't roll that well, but he was still down to 2 HP. The party is ultimately victorious, though it was a tough one. And then they empty the house. After a few sessions of fighting necromancers, they learned that the mercenaries were hired by a cult of necromancers. They informed the king and were on their way to raid the cult's fort. They find a lone guard explaining that he's late and that the Legion is already waiting for them at the fort. The mage doesn't believe him, though he did not roll an insight check, and cast an attack spell. Full damage. Good work, guys. You killed a guard. A real guard. He was not some smart necromancer trying to lure you away to kill you or whatever you thought he was. He was innocent. And his armor melted, so you can't take it. During all the cinematics, aka the times I monologue to describe what is happening, they don't listen to me, look down at their phones, and sometimes interrupt me to speak with each other about things outside of the game. Except my brother. He paid at least some amount of attention, which I'd like from someone playing at my table. Player 1 once looked over my DM's shield. I tried to warn him, even threatened to kill his character after he refused to move. He didn't care, and continued reading my notes, until he got bored and sat back down. Anyways, the raid begins, and it ends with no survivors other than the party, the cult leader, 2 necromancers, and a single paladin. The cult leader points his ebony staff at the sky, and the amethyst on its end starts glowing. Every corpse rises on the battlefield. with glowing purple eyes. The two necromancers started screaming as they melt and their flesh and skin turn to goo. The two skeletons fuse to create a giant four-armed skeleton.
Hey, that's just like the scene in Stranger Things Season 3. You literally copied it, said Player 1.
No, I didn't tell him because he wouldn't have listened, but I wrote this scene before Season 3 was even announced, and Stranger Things wasn't mentioned anywhere in my notes. Plus, except the flesh turning into goo part, this had absolutely nothing to do with Stranger Things. I look at my notes and then suddenly realize that they never make it out alive because they rushed quests faster than I anticipated and were too greedy to pay for equipment. I panic and decide to skip the fight using an encounter that was supposed to happen later on. Another mistake. Then the undead fall again. You all look at the leader, and a throwing dagger is pierced through his skull. A cloaked figure comes out of the shadows and stabs him again before breaking the neck. I'm older now, and I realize my mistake. Robbing them from this epic boss fight and putting them in a damsel in distress / bystander situation probably wasn't a good idea, and in other scenarios, it would have made the DM the true problem. But what happens next is much worse and entirely their fault. The party starts cheering.
We're saved! It's a hero!
If it was sarcastic cheering, they didn't make it seem sarcastic and really seemed to be happy. Until I tell them that the figure removes her hood to be revealed as a dark-haired lady. Then they start complaining.
How can a woman be more powerful than us? It's unfair that she can one-shot an enemy, but not us. You're such a feminist.
The lady casts an invisibility spell and disappears. I describe how the paladin was a veteran who killed countless undead, some demons, and even a dragon, from which he used the scales to make an armor, but that he was terrified at the sight of this woman. Then it gets worse.
He's such a coward for fearing a woman.
She's overpowered. That's not fair. So that you can understand, she was meant to be an outcast vampire, once a vampire queen. At the very least, level 8. I wanted this game to last years, and to have lots of bosses and big bad evil guys, and she was supposed to be a major one, even if I already planned others more powerful than her. I don't remember what I did to make them stop complaining, but I did it. Then I decided to make them run into a traveling merchant, so that they could buy and sell what they wanted or didn't want. You know what they did? They thought the prices weren't good enough, so they tried to take him out and take his stuff and money, even though every item is the same price for every single merchant. Then I said, you put everything you can in your bags, but you're over encumbered, and his pack mules ran away. You can't walk because it's too heavy. Also, it's been a few days since you ate or drank anything, so your strength is reduced. You'll die if you don't eat in the next in-game week.
You're kidding me! We need to eat and pay for food?
Forget that. I won't eat, said Player 1. Fine, you'll just die of starvation, I said, with the most neutral and emotionless tone I could, to indirectly tell him that I didn't care anymore. Player 1's parents parked their car in front of my house a few seconds later, so he went home and we stopped the session there. That was also the end of the campaign. I cut all contacts I had with these 3 people, never talked about it again with my brother, and never DM'd at all after that. Problems everywhere. Granted, this sort of stuff is very common for a newbie. I'm actually surprised that they even did a session 0. OP sounded like they were a child who was trying to demand respect from other children, which I believe was the situation in a sense. Everyone messed up, but I think OP messed up the worst. I'm not talking about the threatening playstyle or anything like that, but trying to play with people who weren't a good fit and running away from DMing overall. First impressions are very powerful, and it's hard to go back after a negative start, but OP ended up missing out on a lot of possible good experiences by never DMing again. I hope OP will understand the error that they made and return to share that world that they spent years building with a worthy group of players. But what do you all think about this situation?